You can't make people decisions without thinking people strategy is going to have an impact on the business as a whole. Why don't you start with us? Because we're an integral part of your company's strategy and we work towards business outcomes. So if you build a company with people and you don't have a people strategist with you, what are you going to do?
You're listening to HR Superstars, a podcast brought to you by 15Five. On this show, we talk to strategic people leaders who are making a meaningful impact in their organizations and shaping the future of work. So get ready to be inspired and discover the secrets behind building high-performing teams and fostering a culture of growth and thriving. The future of HR starts here. Hello and welcome to the HR Superstars podcast. I'm your host, Karina Young. And we're here to connect with the world's leading innovators in the HR and people space who want to get real with us by sharing their life stories, actionable insights, and practical advice to help all of us get better in our craft and make bigger impact through our work. We talk a lot here about distributed teams and keeping engagement strong when we're not face-to-face. It is a top challenge for people leaders that is hitting its peak in the last 5 years. We probably still have more to go till we get quite to the peak. But today we're going to take this discussion global. The list of challenges HR has to overcome for a distributed team in one country is quite long. And when you add international teams to the mix, the complexities can feel overwhelming. From the logistics of time zones, varying legal requirements, language barriers, to the nuanced elements like office culture, local customs, and building connection and alignment to the business, it can seem like a mountain maybe you're not even sure you want to scale as a people leader. But this journey, when done well, offers such incredible reward and growth, not only to people leaders, but to the businesses we serve and the wonderful people in them. So we're really lucky today to have an expert in this space joining us. I'd like to welcome Alexandra Erman, Chief People Officer at BeforeAI. She's a visionary people and HR leader who spent her career enabling startup and SaaS companies to be high-growth dynamic environments through her work leading top people functions. We love that she comes with a data-driven entrepreneurial approach to getting real results. And today we get to tap into her passion for creating harmony in international distributed teams while strategically avoiding common pitfalls and company-centric approaches. Alexandra, welcome to HR Superstars. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners? Who are you inside and outside of work, and how did you get to where you are today?
Thanks, Karina, for having me. I'm excited. I've been listening to this podcast for years now, and it's such a privilege to be here. So I'm currently Chief People Officer at BeforeAI. Before that, I was VP People at StreamSets in the San Francisco area. And before that, I was holding the function of internal ops. So it was finance, administration, and people at Agora Pulse, which is HQ'd in Paris and quite distributed. So I've been, having global roles for a long time in very distributed settings. And I love it. It's my passion because I'm an immigrant maybe, or because I just like, the diversity that it brings. That there's so many things that just correspond to me. And what I think corresponds to me the most in this setting is the ability to really use there's not one approach to things. And I really like that. Outside of work, I live in California. I've been here for 13 years. I love it. I come from France. I have 2 beautiful teenagers. I've recently taken the art of Ikebana, and it really grounds me. I love doing it. I'm taking classes. It's beautiful. It's a creative outlet. And recently I started taking tango lessons. And it's a trip.
I love that. You are international in your interests and your life, everything. That is incredible. So, I guess I'm not totally surprised then to hear you have this passion and focus for teams, but tell us a little bit more about what inspired you. Did that kind of to really lead and focus on these great international distributed team cultures? Was that from your experience mostly as an immigrant or an experience in a particular company?
I don't know that I was initially inspired to do it. I don't know that it was a choice, by intention. It just happened that when I started in startup life in Paris in 2005, I was already bilingual in English and had great knowledge of the US culture. And I was hired for that. And therefore it became, like, oh, I guess, she can do it. And it turned out I could.
That's so interesting that you started your journey coming from Europe and into the US. What was your biggest culture shock finding talent, creating business on the other side of the pond for you? What was unexpected?
Working here in tech in the last 10 years have been wonderful in the sense that being really progressive in the way we go about how we manage people, how we want to build team, how we want to scale, what we're thinking around the people function is really here that it's happening. For me, that's what I see. That's really what I found here. France is trying, but we're way ahead.
I love that. I think that's super helpful insight. So when you think about global culture, right, and fostering this unified cohesion across teams, across countries, what stands out for you in creating that balance so that you are respecting cultural differences where your employees are, but you still have that sense of unity within a company?
The sense of unity can be built around a few things. What's the ethos of your company? For us, there's unity around our mission. It's really strong and it's really driving. We're in cybersecurity. We have a preemptive, predictive solution that fights crime, and the people who join are crime fighters. We really are crime fighters, and that's in the mission that they have for themselves, and they join ours. So the alignment can be fine that. But, when people say they join for the culture, they take a risk because they can see only what they can see from the candidate experience and what they can read here and there, and they take a leap of faith. And it's within the first 6 months that we see if their leap of faith was the right one or not. For me, it's, you have a right to be who you are. You have a right to your own culture. You have a right to your own ways, as long as you adhere to general principles of how we function, how we think about things, how we process things. Of course, we have policies, but the unification is not so much as everybody should look the same. It's more of this is how we're going to communicate. This is how we're going to collaborate. This is how we're going to honor you. This is how we're going to celebrate you. This is how we're going to recognize you. This is what's expected of you. This is how we're going to assess your performance. All these things that are done in other companies, but the way we do it is extremely intentional because of the nature of our distribution.
I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, and I read that book that was so popular at the time. I think it's Bringing Up Bebe, right? Which is, the French way of parenting and how more American parents can do that. And one of the things that I really took away from that book that I think about even beyond parenting was that idea of like the picture frame, which is you have these rules and these guidelines that are non-negotiable. It's your framework for what you have. And then the creativity can come from anything that happens inside that frame, which is a lot like what you're talking about of we have our standard policies. We have ways that you will know and understand how we recognize you, celebrate you, do these things. And then you have the freedom in the middle to still be yourself and show up as that great talent you just scouted the globe for, right? You don't want to have that be so constricting and restraining, but using that as a way to really think about balancing the global cohesion while also respecting cultural differences, I think is a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, thanks. And, in the nitty gritty of it, it's like we celebrate every holiday for every country. So we use an HRIS that allows us to customize, and people have their holidays in their country, but we also make a point on Slack every week to say, hey, next week, this is what you can expect. These colleagues are going to be out, in India, they're celebrating this, and in Slovenia, they're celebrating that. And so it brings an awareness to other people, and it also respects the fact that people are out because, when you're in your country and it's not a holiday, you always wonder, why is he not working today? We have biases around that, and the freedom to have that is really important for us. And there are plenty of things that we take the time to do intentionally to bring a form of equity. And I think the equity for me is really important. It's like, how do you balance, like, let's say our policy is you take 20 to 25 days per year in paid time off. Now, if you're in a country that mandates 25 or 30 days, of course, you're going to have that freedom to take those legal 30 days. But for the others where the mandate is like 10 days or 12 days, or there are no mandates, How do you create a sense of unity where people don't feel like, oh, because I live here, I only get 12 days, and because I live there, I get 30. So everybody gets kind of the same. And we encourage them to take their time off, even in cultures where it's like, no, I work, 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 and never take time off. No, we make sure, hey, we want you to take time off. We want you to rest. We want you to sharpen your axe. So like, go on vacation, please. All the little things that we have to tweak all the time. And the funny thing is that every time we add someone from another country, we get to discover the beauties of their, compliance requirements. So
tell us more about that. What are some of those common mistakes that companies can really avoid when it comes to managing teams? Things like, right, being thoughtful about time off and thinking of equity. What are other big pitfalls that you would encourage companies to avoid, and how have you avoided them?
So it all depends if they start from a country-centric mentality or not. We're not country-centric. When people ask me, oh, where's your company from? I'm like, from the world. We're nowhere and everywhere. We don't have an HQ and we don't have offices. For example, if it's a US company that develops the international markets and they want to have team globally, they're going to look at things from a US-centric point of view. Like, we're going to base everything we do from what we know from the US. And that might be a strong pitfall. Get to know the other country, what really works in that country, and adapt your teams to that country. If they're locally managed, it's easier. But if you're in a startup with 100 or 150 people and management is in a different country than teams, that cultural awareness, that way of doing things awareness needs to be part of the scaling of the team and the growth and the training of the manager. In that mentality of, this is when I work and the other person is on a different time zone and they are going to have to adapt. That's also something that unconsciously happens, even though we say, no, it's fine. I can manage the time zone. Unconsciously, we don't want to do it. So the intentionality around creating systems that are geared toward asynchronous communication is really important. All the things that can be done in writing, or send a video, but you don't need to be in a meeting to discuss 70% of the things that you want to discuss. And, we're doing it successfully. Sometimes it takes a little bit of training. We have our how-tos. We have, a Confluent page with how-tos, everything. And we also have an AI that allows you to search all our Confluent page, like, how do I? And then the AI will tell you this, it's on this page, look at that page. And we have a really strong onboarding cheat sheet with everything you need to look at, everything you need to do, every people you need to meet, and it's geared toward the team you're in and etc. But the point is, we want people to be independent and autonomous and not depend on somebody who's 12 hours away and that you'll probably never meet. So, the more documentation, the more systems and processes we put in place towards that autonomy and asynchronicity of communication, the more successful we are. And the truth is, we're not building a distributed company that looks like in office. And that's also, a pitfall. Like, oh yeah, now we want to be remote or global and we want to reproduce what we're doing in office. It doesn't work. You have to rethink your way of working and your way of collaborating and your way of communicating.
Well, it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about too is just an intentionality around communication, that being so central to, honestly, whether you're in an office or not, but how things get communicated, where you find information is so important. And that is really that big mountain our new hires have to climb, right, to really understanding it connected. But even for people who are in your organization, I'm sure just to have a reliable way that I always know where to go to find this information, whether I am in the US, am I in Europe, am I in Asia, do I have help, do I not have help? They always have a resource that, to your point, is not time zone bound. It's available to them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way we've done that is that we have a role in our company that's called HOPE. It's Head of Operational Performance and Excellence. And he's in charge of processes and documentation, amongst other things. And so we've invested early in support roles, whether it be the people team or chief of staff, HOPE, and other support function that really help that machine to be oiled at all times. And seems to be working so far. So we're quite happy.
Yeah, well, that's a really great perspective to take that I think a lot of companies do miss, is realizing the importance of that investment in those functions very early on, not waiting until you are 400 or 500 people and everything is painful. And now the solution can't come fast enough and it's never going to feel good enough. You already have that set from the early days. I mean, that is a real differentiator.
Yeah. Don't get me started on that topic. I mean, meeting a CEO who hired me at 50 people saying, we're going to go into hyper growth. We're going to raise Series B and Series C, and I need a chief people officer today in order to build the company of tomorrow. I'm like, you're my man.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, that's what you were saying before. Yeah, that future of work mentality that you are thinking of looking at. I mean, that is very forward thinking. That's atypical in a way that is so meaningful. Like, when you heard that, what did that feel like? What did that spark for you? What were you most excited about being able to do and at the size that you joined?
Yeah, well, I was excited that I was seen and understood, and the things that I had been saying for a few years now is like, why do you bring us strategic thinkers when you're 200 people and it's already like, there's so many problems to solve, I understand, but why don't you start with us? Because we're an integral part of your company's strategy and we work towards business outcomes the same way the CFO or other roles. So if you build a company with people and you don't have a people strategist with you, what are you going to do? It was wonderful. And it's allowed me probably to do my best work ever. My CEO has ideas, but he's also hired me for the things that I do and the way I do them. And it's wonderful to be able to build programs and help the company think on that side of, like, how does it affect the business and how does it affect the people when you make such decisions? Because they're all intertwined. They all work together at all times. You can't make people decisions without thinking people strategy is going to have an impact on the business as a whole.
It's so important because it gets so lost. And I'm sure that there are people who listen to this who even just feel, hearing what you said, feel seen in their own way, right? And maybe feel their own sense of hope, not to steal your colleague's title, but that like, oh, there are leaders out there who think about this, that I am a leader like that. I have space to think, and I think even to demand that we do have that seat at the table, because there are many leaders outside of the people space who think, well, sure, I can onboard people. I can get this done or that done without a people leader. But it's that thought leadership, that really strategic vision that you bring in, what it sounds like you're also excited to bring into your role of how is everything we're doing as a business have an impact on our people. That lens that you can bring in has real business value that can be forgotten. That's forgotten for a lot of people. And so I love that you are standing up for it, doing it, even at a small size.
Yeah.
Thinking about international distributed teams, does that change the way you think about showing the ROI of the people function, or how you think about the metrics that matter to you when you're showing the business impact? Does that change when you have teams all across the world versus teams just in one country?
No, it's the same. The cohesion of the teams, the output of the teams, the same way, the engagement, the same way. Do I have a pulse and engagement a little bit more? Yes, of course, but my metrics are pretty much the same. And it's interesting because I'm going to have a workshop with my team in March, and we're going to have a whole day dedicated to measure what matters, and we're going to rethink what we're going to measure. So I might come up with a different answer if you talk to me in 6 months or in 3 months, but it's been an interesting journey to have that space to think about, what do I really want to measure? What really matters? What really has a business impact? For example, out of habit on the board deck, there's like the head count and some ratios about the head count. And I challenged that the other day. I'm like, why is this number interesting or important? What does it matter? Because if you want to benchmark headcount versus other US startups, then we're missing the point. The point is, it's the cost of labor that is really interesting to look at here. How do we compare to other startups in the same in the same phase of growth. So we're Series Bs, and we have all this benchmark that says, at Series Bs, you should be around that many people, and the ratio cost of labor versus the overall cost, blah, blah, blah. The bottom line is what's the most important at the end of the day to show to the board, right? So headcount, when the average salaries for us is lower, of course it is. It's lower than any other average salary for a startup whose people are only in the US. So does the headcount really matter? So rethinking those metrics regularly is something that is important to me to look at, because sometimes we bring in what we used to do somewhere else, or what we think is right, or what we've seen and read, and, pausing and really saying, is that really what we want to measure here? How is it important for this company? What are we showing? What are we proving when we're saying that? Yeah. So I can't wait for that workshop. But no.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. We'll have to have a follow-up post-workshop of what happened, what came out of this measure what matters. That's interesting. I've been thinking about a very similar thing with the people team at 15.5 too, and just what are we showing? We don't have to just show the same old numbers that get regurgitated over and over again if there's no real business value. But we very often don't get the time to sit and think in that way, right? And just have the space to do it. So I think that's incredible that that's already a part of what you're planning for your team.
Yeah, thanks.
Just measuring employee performance is no longer enough. 15.5 helps your HR team take action to maximize performance. With 15.5's performance management platform, you can easily set up review cycles, collect ongoing performance data, track employee goals, and deploy customized campaigns that empower managers to drive growth. Learn more at 15.5.com or click the link in the show notes.
Management's hard enough anywhere. Tell me a little bit about dual management. And for our listeners out there who don't really know what that means, what is dual management and what does that actually look like in your organization today? Why are you doing it? Is it working for you?
Yeah. Thanks for the why question, because I always start with why, what's going on and why are we doing this? So when I met with Luigi, our CEO, the first time, we had this conversation around what are the main problems, when we go into hypergrowth, and especially in teams that need to have small pods of execution of projects, how do we grow that, and what are the main issues? And the obvious one of the main issues is people end up going up in management without any management skills. So, like take a tech team, you're creating pods, you need a team lead. The team lead is a great team lead. It's a functional team lead. They know their job. They know how to mentor other software developers or data engineers or whatever, but they've never managed a team before. And suddenly we ask them to manage a team, and we don't have an L&D department. We don't have time to train anyone. Everybody's kind of new. It's like this phase of building, and we just build. And then suddenly we're like, oops, what have we done? So because we're thinking about it ahead, we agreed that team leads didn't have to be managers. They just needed to be functional leads, but we needed managers. And so we've created a team, and that's the people team. The people and I want to say my team, it's not my team, is the company's people team. They are the managers. So the dual management is that during your tenure here at BeforeAI, you will have a main manager who will stay your manager, whatever team you end up being in. They stay with you, and we're a coach, we're managers, we help you with growth, professional development, personal development, day-to-day issues with work or colleagues. We help you with communication, we help you with upskilling, whatever you need, we're going to be here, we're your partner. And then they have functional leads who lead the project that they're on or the team that they're on, and it's just métier oriented. That's just business, job, business. And what it does is that it really relieves that growth hurdle of, we're growing, but we're having management dysfunctions, or there's no alignment in the way people are managed, or there's no continuity. And it also gives people kind of a different outlet. So with their functional manager, they talk job. And they also have their manager with whom they can have those real one-on-ones where they really talk about what's happening, and they don't revert by default to talk about the job, Sometimes they will talk about the job, but it's not, how many of those one-on-ones end up being a work meeting when they should not, right? We have one-on-ones, we talk about those goals. How are you tracking? What's missing in your everyday work life in order to get where you want to be? How's your collaboration with Jane been recently? What are you saying? What are you not saying? What would you like to do in the next project? All these things where people have the ability to exist really fully and also bring up if they have issues with their functional leads. Now they have a place to talk about it, because otherwise, if their functional lead is also their manager, how do they do that? Especially if they're younger in the workforce. So that's how we do dual management. We have 4 managers. They're part of the people team, and they're, kind of overseeing entire team. So they have a holistic view of the team, what's working, what's not working at a team level, so that they can better understand the individuals. We've been doing that for 6, 7, 8 months now, and it seems to be working really, really well. So I'm really happy. Yeah.
And how do you measure if it's working well or not? What are the things that you're looking for that are signals you're headed in the right direction?
I'm going to be really honest with you. I don't know yet, do I keep a pulse on the company weekly? Yes. And the mood seems to be a really good one. Like 15.5 had a weekly check-in with a pulse. We have kind of the same system in place. And so the engagement is high still. We're trying to do continuous performance management system where we're kind of gearing away from the traditional annual review. And, we have really one-on-ones. People are showing up. They're taking suggestions. They're thinking about things differently. They're really setting goals. I don't know. There's something that's just taking. It's working. It's jiving. For now, it's more of a intuitive thing. And also we don't have attrition. That's also a good sign, right? Or very little voluntary attrition. I don't know, but ask me again after March.
Okay. Well, yeah, we have a lot in this file, but what can I just say, that's totally honest with you, Alexandra, like how lovely and refreshing to hear someone like a leader just say, I don't know yet. This is an innovative thing that we are doing, and we'll see the signals. And you have some, right? You're thinking about engagement and attrition, but to even just have like that innovative space to say, we trust that we know the why deep enough that you've put the thought into it. It's okay if we don't know all the metrics today. We'll get to that point. That's really beautiful and really wonderful to also have that vulnerability. That's not easy to do, and also shows, I think, just coming back to that trust between you and your CEO, right? That people first mentality of, I don't have to prove everything with 20,000 data points before I do it. Like sometimes we just know what we know. So thinking about this dual management structure, I've never seen anything like this, and I'm so curious. I'm really curious about it. What does that mean practically for, I guess, how you prep each group of managers between your team leads and your people team and those coaches? Do you have really clear structure between them? What makes them function well so far without kind of stepping on each other's toes?
Oh, we step on each other's toes. We do. And it's fine because, we can do 2 people doing one little thing at the same time. It just helps the IC better. And there's no conflict and there's no power struggle. We have a diagram, we have a Venn diagram, and in one circle you have responsibilities of the people partner, and then the other you have responsibilities of the functional lead, and in the middle, everything that we do together, because we do work together, because we need feedback from each other. So if you're a team lead and you haven't heard it from one of your team members, but there's an issue, we don't break confidentiality of the one-on-ones, but we do report like, hey, there seems to be kind of a systemic thing going on in your team. Tell me about what you've experienced. And so, sometimes the people partner of IC is most likely they're going to be also the people partner of the functional lead. And so, they have the 2 sides of the coin. They hear the 2 stories. How do you get more perspective, a more holistic view of the system? Because everything is systemic, right? And we think like that. So there's no right or wrong. There's just like, this happened. This is your point of view. This is your point of view. How can we reconcile that? How we can help you to see the other side, and how can we help you to accept the other side? There are plenty of ways to go about that. And sometimes, yes, well, sometimes people think, well, I'm also their manager. I'm like, yeah, of course you are.
Yeah. Well, I imagine that's also incredibly helpful when you also want to have the space as a people leader and that coach to recognize those cultural differences and the customs that one group of employees might be feeling right in a distributed team versus another. We put so much pressure on traditional managers to be like, now I feel like it's just typical. Everybody's a player coach and you have to be the best player coach all the time, do everything right. You can't leave anybody out, but everybody has to get every metric done at the highest level. It's just so many priorities pulling. And so splitting that gives each line of work its important recognition and space to happen the way it needs to, instead of cramming it all together and crossing our fingers, hoping it works.
I absolutely agree with you. And also, being a perfect player coach is most of the time too much to ask the people who are newer, and it's like they're 5 years in, it's their first time managing, and now you got to do your work and then coach and manage other people. It's a lot. So this is how we're doing it. Yeah.
And so what advice would you give to someone listening to this who wants to try it or bring this into their company? For people who want to do this for the first time, what advice would you give them?
Be clear with the why you're doing it. Very clear, do you want to try it and you have space to have an experiment and also have space if it's not working? It means you might have to let go of an entire people team. So be really clear. And and you feel or that it's going to solve the real pains of your company's growth plan or management issues, then try it. And, within the people team, the people partners I'm working with have very specific skills. So they're HR professionals who are also either coach or, have been in business, really HRBPs, really, really invested in the business side of companies. So they have particular skills that adapt to particular needs. But I would say build a team that really, really understands the business. Because when you're dealing with functional managers and, and team issues and all that, and you're not on the ops or compliance side, because that's not what we're taking care of. We're really taking care of management. You need to understand the business and you need to understand each role really well. Otherwise, you won't be able to be effective as a manager.
Yeah, I think that is incredible advice. So let's shift a little bit to another big area that comes up with global workforce, which is compensation and pay, right? We talked a little bit about that earlier around kind of benefits and time off, but what are the principles that guide your comp philosophy in an international distributed environment?
Cash is king. I mean, our role is to remember that, first of all, we serve at the pleasure of the company. And at the end of the day, cash is king, right? At our level, we understand the business needs. So if we look at it from a cash perspective, it's like, how do we optimize for the amount of cash that we have to hire and pay and still keep a sense of equity and still be attractive on the markets that, we know our talents are. So it's, a few parameters to put in place. And the way that we've decided to go about it is to create bands that are cost to company, using various tools to benchmark. First of all, we have a work from anywhere policy. So you can work from anywhere as long as we can support the country that we're in. We use partners, EOR, all that. And if we can support the country that you're in, we're happy to hire you there. Unless we need you for a specific market. So if we need to hire people for sales purposes on a specific market, then the salary benchmark that we'll use is local. But for the rest, we have global bands that are cost to company. So this is the envelope that we have for this role at that level to hire someone. And from there, we adapt to where you are. So if you're in France, we're going to make you an offer that your gross salary will cost us that. So I have to reverse engineer a little bit because I want to make sure that I can hire people from all sorts of countries. Does it mean that some people in some countries are going to be paid way more than their market? Yeah, probably. Good for them. First of all, this is who we are. We pay at this level.
Yeah.
We're not big enough that we're going to disrupt an entire market where we hire. We hire 2 people, 3 people. And even if we hire 100, it's not going to disrupt the market so much. So I don't have a moral issue doing that. Yeah, and that's our philosophy. We create bands and they're benchmarked with various tools, and I went very global, EMEA, global region. And I said, okay, if I want to cover this part of the world, my bands need to be between this and this for each role, for each level.
Again, so innovative, such a different way to think about building it, the right thing for your company based on what you know about the business, the money that you have, the resources, bringing in that great talent. Are there any trends or challenges that you're seeing when it comes to the compensation space and global talent?
No, I don't know enough about trends. I've seen companies that are, country-centric and they will pay the American way in other countries. That's an old trend that's dying slowly but surely. I think, with tools like Ravio or Pave, benchmarking roles everywhere in the world is becoming more accessible. And I think it's a great thing because, we used to buy benchmarks and they come in PDF and that whole thinking around crowdsourcing compensation and total rewards packages is really interesting. I think a trend that I've seen is more and more European talents are very aware of what equity in the US sense means. And they used to not really care about stock options, and they do care now more than before. And I think that's a good thing. It also shows like, hey, I can get a stake of this company. I want it. And not just for the eventual rewards in 4 years, if ever there's an exit, but it's like, it's an investment. It's a different kind of motivation. And I like that.
Those are 2 great insights, especially as an AI organization, right? Being able to have the information on demand when it comes to pay and trends, and you're hiring roles too that are at times like emerging new in the field, right? Looking for people with newer skill sets who are forward thinking, being able to have information around compensation, benefits, perks, equity that is not already 12, 18 months stale, but it's today, it's now. I think helps us make the right decisions as people leaders and put our best foot forward when it comes to putting these programs together.
Yeah, I'm personally totally in favor of pay transparency, but that's a personal thing.
Yeah. What do you see as the benefits of pay transparency? What makes you passionate about that?
When you have proper leveling system and job ladders, and then you create bands around levels that are your company bands. And this is who we are. This is how we pay. We're at 50th percentile, 60th percentile, wherever you position yourself. There's no right or wrong. This is the company that we are at this point. Shall we try to be at a higher percentile when we have higher revenue? Yeah, probably. So position yourself where you are, who you are, and then that's it. There's nothing to hide. It should be totally transparent. If you have that role at that level, you're going to make between this and that. And what it does is that it's reassuring for everybody. There's not that little, competition, or why is she making? Why is he making? No, we're kind of all treated the same way. And I really believe it removes a lot of conflicts and a lot of insecurity for people, because since those bands are based on levels and you have a growth path or, some kind of career pathing, then if you're motivated by a better salary, then you'll be motivated by getting to that next level where that automatically you'll get into a different tranche. It makes things more simple.
Yeah. Well, I think it also holds leaders accountable. Very different way for the compensation decisions that they make, how they structure their team, being able to speak to that, which again is hard for a lot of leaders today who are trying to do many things, especially those, like you were saying, who are greener in their career. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly a benefit and a trust that comes with that kind of transparency of we've designed this with intentionality. We've put a lot of thought and work into it to ensure it is equitable and consistent with our values. So here it is.
Yeah.
And if you want more, this is how you get it. You know what the expectation is.
Exactly.
Well, Alexandra, before we wrap up, I would love to hear what is one piece of advice you have for HR leaders who are in a global organization today and want to do one thing to elevate their impact, be better in some way?
Read the news.
What mandate? That's a mandate.
No, I mean, if you really want to support a global workforce, of course, you can't know everything that's happening in every country. But, I think that there's an awareness of, hey, there's been an earthquake not very far from where, Ahmed lives, or, hey, there's an outbreak. We tend to forget that these things really impact people, but they do. And recently there's been a change of government in a country that I know one of our people is from, although she lives in another country. And I just dropped a little note. Hey, I was thinking about you. I hope you're all right and you're finding your way through this. And that goes like such a long way. If you're in a company of 15,000 people, you can't really do that. Although you should. I really think you should, because, we're here to take care of them and in a way that really matters to them. That's a little thing. I think the devil is in the details. And that's why I rethink my systems. Like, okay, this has been working for 6 months, 12 months. Is this still working? Is this still optimal? Is this still what we need to do?
Yeah, no, I like that. Just, remembering the value of those small one-to-one interactions and what that means, and not getting stale. If you've been doing it and it's been a while, it's always okay to rethink and refresh. I think it's a great mindset to have. Well, Alexandra, thank you so much for your time and your insights today. Your experience, not only in global organizations, but just the way you're thinking about the people function and its impact and being innovative in the space, is really inspiring. And I know our listeners are going to take, if not one, many things away from this that they can try in what they're doing today, whether or not everybody's in the same country or they are distributed. So appreciate your time.
Karina, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I'll listen to you many other times in the future.
And maybe I'll see you again in 3 months to do a follow-up check on all the things.
I'll be there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The performance review is dead. We're sure you've heard that one before. But is it true? Not necessarily. There's a good chance that your performance review could just use a little makeover. Luckily, 15.5 has crafted a playbook to help. In it, you'll find a thorough review of academic and industry research from a survey of over 1,000 strategic HR leaders, distilled into 5 principles to keep in mind as you design or improve your review process. Every organization has different goals and context to consider when it's designing reviews. This playbook walks through decisions, options, and trade-offs you'll encounter as you design your review process and share best practices. We'll drop a link in the show notes for you to check out.